Hello, beautiful people. Today I want to talk about something that's rather counterintuitive, and meaning I want to talk about how your negative emotions and engaging with negative emotions can help you increase your vibration. Well, many people, especially those spiritual folks, maybe you are such person, always think that only thinking happy, positive thoughts and feeling happy, positive feelings is the thing that increases the vibration. And in general, yes, but not always. This is a very simplified way of understanding things because people keep thinking about emotions in the wrong terms. People think about positive emotions and negative emotions. And this is a good distinction, superficial one, but okay. But you have to understand and remember that emotions live on a spectrum. It's kind of a line of increasing vibration gradually from emotion to emotion, from vibrational state to another vibrational state. Is not just the negative emotions and positive emotions. And at the lowest level, you're gonna have all the guilt, shame, going up through fear, jealousy, annoyance, anger, then annoyance, all these kind of negative emotions. Then you have neutral level, and then you start climbing towards positive emotions such as hopefulness, appreciation, gratefulness, joy, bliss, love. You know, all these amazing emotions that are higher. So you see, not all negative emotions are equal. Not all positive emotions are equal in their vibration. So on the spectrum of negative emotions, you're gonna have really low vibrating emotions such as hopelessness, shame, and guilt. And they are way lower than, for example, anger. Being in fear state is way lower than anger. And it's important to understand this because this will serve you in increasing your vibration. I want to give you a great story that illustrates how increasing vibrations, even to another negative emotion, can be a life-changing increase of vibration. Some of you might already know that I used to be sick, really sick for a long period of time, and I healed myself through the power of mind, through increasing vibration, through the law of attraction, through working with the connection of my mind and the body, and making sense out of this whole emotional mess that had contributed to the illness in the first place. Yes, emotions and low vibrations contribute and are actually the most important factor to developing an illness. This is basically where the most people get sick, when they have predominant state of fear, or mostly actually shame, guilt, and hopelessness in their life. It doesn't have to be anything to do with their health, can be, but with life in general. But staying in that state of the lowest vibrating emotions is cutting themselves off from the constant flow of the life force energy. And this is what happened to me. What happened to me, I became sick when I was really in guilt, shame, hopelessness, fear, anxiety, and for a long period of time, constantly overworking, constantly feeling guilty about something, constantly regretting something, constantly trying to make out a facade of a person that is deserving enough in some way, especially in the work kind of scenario, but also in relationships. And this is so common. This is so common because all of the people that I worked with later that were able to heal themselves, by the way, by using their own power of mind, by using the law of attraction, by using increasing of vibration, because even if they were positive, even if I was positive, it was only a facade that was hiding the emotions of shame, the emotions and thought of guilt, hopelessness, fear, and such. And only when I was able to tap into my anger, which is a higher vibrating emotion, but still in our understanding, it's a negative emotion. That's why engaging in accessing on purpose higher vibrating emotions, even if they are negative, not only allows us to factually access, embody the energy from these emotions, even for a temporary period of time. I will explain you more how that works. Please don't switch off if you're afraid of anger. Don't freak out. You're not going to become an angry person when you start engaging in anger. So engaging purposefully in higher vibrating emotions, even if they're still negative emotions, help you move out of the lower vibrating state that is the predominant state of yours. And even visiting the higher vibrating but still negative emotions such as anger. I speak very much about anger because this is very mobilizing energy, and we have to move energies from the lowest vibrating ones. It adds the fire, it adds the momentum. It helps us connect to and embrace a fuller spectrum of our humanity. This video is not going to be useful if you are already fully chilled, fully healed, you healed all your traumas, you don't have any of your coping mechanisms such as people pleasing, perfectionism, performing, inauthenticity. But if you have any of those, if you feel like you always have to, or sometimes have to pretend or put a mask of some sort, if you are maybe suffering with some health issues, this is what will help you. Because all these coping mechanisms, tendencies, and traits that turn us into this acceptable and nicer person are an expression of being inauthentic. It's us trying to squish certain traits that were not acceptable in our childhood most of the times. If you have witnessed maybe bursts of anger, if you have witnessed any negative consequences of anger of someone, or pride, or someone being like forceful, but you know, there could be also good ways, good expressions of being forceful, full of pride, full of self-confidence, but maybe you have seen only the negative expression when someone was arrogant, when someone was bullying people, when someone was angry. Then you were able to witness only the negative manifestations of the negative emotions, but they also have a positive aspects when you can use them, when you embrace them in activities such as shadow work. You know, when I was accessing my anger during the illness I was healing from, I noticed how much I had been repressing and why I had been repressing anger so much. And the reason is that I would be disapproved of, obviously, for expressing anger as a child, and I would be rewarded, let's say like this, or more accepted when I was not displaying those emotions. And it depends on the household you were brought up in, but most of our culture, they disapprove of anger, pride, being big, being full of yourself, being playful maybe. And all these things will be shamed. You will be told that you are a bad person. Maybe you're a bad girl for being so confident and so cocky and so playful. You should be humble, you should be sweet, you should be gentle and quiet. And you subdue different traits of your personality to be approved of. And like I said, it's basically an expression of inauthenticity in order to trade your truth for survival. I speak all about this in my other videos, especially video about beliefs. I can share it here, how we have to sacrifice our parts in order to survive as children. But as we are individually and as humanity on a trajectory to living our full authentic selves, to living in a full spectrum of our humanity, speaking truth, thinking truth, behaving truthfully in accordance to who you are, and being accepted, because we no longer have to live so much in groups like our ancestors did. We developed all these mechanisms and traits and repressing of certain behaviors and traits in order to survive in groups. And yes, as small children, we are still needing to be taken care of our parents, because we cannot cope as tiny babies to put a roof over our heads and get food from somewhere, or even to stay safe, right? So we do have to, as children, sacrifice some of our truth in order to be accepted. But as we grow up, we no longer need that. You are perfectly self-sufficient. And so we need to develop that truthfulness in our expression instead of keeping on repression with the lid on different traits that we've been keeping. And you might be asking, yeah, this is all about hiring my vibration. This is a video all about increasing my vibration. And it is. Because once you embrace the fullness of your emotions, the fullness of your needs, desires, and traits that you've been repressing, and you maybe have been ashamed of, you embrace them as a loving parent would if they were unconditionally loving. Immediately, you are increasing your vibration because you are showing yourself love and compassion through your presence, through your unconditional presence in the face of those emotions. And this is absolutely life-changing, and it is so life-changing. You can practically, materially notice this physically, in the physical realm, how it changes your life when you heal a disease like I did, and many women that worked with me did, through accessing their negative emotion of anger, in claiming their power, forcefulness that maybe would be seen arrogant. If you were a constant, like if you live in peace state all the time, and not just by repression, but you are fully authentic as well, then you don't have to specifically go and engage in that. But when these emotions show up in our life, we need to look at them because they serve us purpose. We were born with a full spectrum of emotions, and each of them has a purpose. And it is not to say that you need to visit them for any long period of time. Each of these emotions are just to be passed by. Emotions are in constant flow. You know, visiting anger could be a session of journaling when you express what bothers you, when you write a letter that you don't send. And this is what I was doing on a daily basis. I would engage in 15 or 20 minutes of journaling about anger to access an emotion that I did not have access to, but it had freed so much of the vital force that helped me to maintain a momentum to higher vibrating emotions. And throughout the day, it's only like 15 or 20 minutes you can do, or in shadow work, that's basically the same thing. To visit and embrace the emotions that you were so ashamed of, that you didn't want to show to anyone, but holding them in deep compassion, with open heart, with full presence, and maybe even grieving the times where you were not able to express your fullness of humanity. And through that, you're showing yourself love. After that, and around all that time, you can engage in all the positive affirmations, expression, feeling and thinking positive thoughts, meditating on gratefulness, appreciating things, but having a little bit outlets of knowing that there is a side of you that has all these emotions, that you allow yourself and give yourself permission, frees you and frees all that life force energy that you've been trying to stifle down. As energy cannot be stifled down. Negative emotions have a purpose to point you that you are outside of your truth, and they should inform you. That's why staying in them for too long is not a good idea. I don't encourage this at all. It's just to visit for as long as you need to mobilize that energy without, you know, bursting at other people. You can keep it to yourself, perfectly to yourself, but you will have access to being able, maybe standing up for yourself, unless you admit to yourself and acknowledge that you have anger. You can't stand up for yourself unless you claim possibility that you are full of yourself, as maybe what other people would have shamed in the past. You can't be shining your full light and maybe serve people and serve all the goodness of your beautiful traits, teaching, wisdom, or sharing any of your gifts, your art, or any other work that you might be. Because you always feeling like, I have to be humble, I have to be small, I can't show my full self because this is too arrogant. You need to access all these things in a positive way. But for that to happen, first you would need to admit that you have that potential. All the negative emotions have a very specific purpose. I keep saying that. I'll share a video where you can learn all about this. They signal to you where you are not aligned to your core self, to your wise, loving, unconditional self. And knowing this information is important because it's like a fire alarm. So if you have a tendency to repress some emotions because they've been seen as bad, you don't want to look bad. You don't want to be seen as a bad person, and you're not bad by having anger, by having pride, by having forcefulness. You're not a bad person. But if you don't look at them, it's like putting a pillow on a fire alarm and pretending that you don't hear it, instead of putting out the fire, which is the reason why the negative emotions exist. okay? There is something off. You need to look at this. You're not supposed to put a pillow on the fire alarm of your emotions. And again, how is that going to make you feel better? Instantly you will feel presence, your own unconditional presence, when you give yourself permission to have any of these tendencies, to have any of these feelings, and having ability to tap into them when you need. You become authentic, and authenticity, living your truth, this is a pure alignment to your core self. It's literally an equivalent of the most natural state of a human person, which is thriving through living their truth, through expressing their truth, through living in a state of love, because you're not afraid. You know you always can respond because you love yourself. You have shown to yourself that you love yourself by that unconditional presence. I even have shivers when I talk about it. It's just this tingly, beautiful, light emotion when you living a life authentically, when you don't need to present yourself through some facade, fearing that otherwise you would not be accepted, and all the time living from that fear, shame, and guilt. You know, when you are able to drop the mask, when you are able to live from your core self, from your truth, this is when you really have access to living your passion. You start giving yourself permission for living your passion, because you don't have to repress your desires. Then you have more access to your joy. You have more access to love. You have more access to more connected, loving, unconditional relationships, because you are living your truth. You present your true self to others. Therefore, they can meet you there. All of a sudden, you start filtering all the assholes from your life who are only attracted to the facade that you've been projecting. The gentle, the coy, the timid, the person who cannot access all of the spectrum of his or her emotions, and therefore is suffering depression, anxiety, illness, physical illness, sacrificing their parts. I hope you're hearing what I'm saying, because this is so important, that we get to visit and sometimes even engage in those negative emotions, traits, embrace them, see how they're useful to you. You know, actually, I just remembered an instance that I was healing my trauma. I developed trauma from a shock, and I lived in a shock state for several months. And that was a fear state, a state of frozenness. And that fear was immobilized. It was immobilized as a kind of frozen rock. And there was a situation when an old friend took me for granted. She was inconsiderate of my time. She didn't come for an appointment, and I was really bummed out. But I was also on the journey to self-love. So opposite to how I would used to act, how I had used to act, which would be like, oh yeah, I'm chilled. I don't care if you take me for granted. I'm just this easygoing person. You don't have to worry about me waiting for you endlessly. You know, this is what I would have said ages ago. But still being in trauma, I decided to take that opportunity to stand up for myself. I knew, because I had learned so much about trauma, emotions, and vibrations, that once I tap into my anger, I will move myself out of the frozen state of fear and mobilize myself higher, okay? And I knew how that would work So I allowed myself and I gave myself a permission to stand up for myself and say, this is not cool. You're not respectful of my time. You're inconsiderate. And I would appreciate if you were to respect this. This felt so good. And this freed me up. I stood up for myself for this time and for all previous times when she was late, when she was inconsiderate of my time, but also for all other things that were inconsiderate to me. And I used this as an opportunity, still very gracious, still very polite, but very firm, which is a higher vibration than frozen fear. And from then on, I relieved my trauma. You can't imagine how fast I moved out of PTSD, a diagnosed post-traumatic stress disorder, literally in the matter of a day or two. When I accessed my anger, when I was able to fully embrace my power and firmness through accessing anger. I was really pissed off, but I would have always played being just like easygoing, chilled, agreeable, gentle, cool, peace, which is great. But anger is great as well. It shows when we got to do something for ourselves to bring our life to balance. Otherwise, I would be always squishing my needs, my need for appreciation, my need for acceptance, my need for people respecting me, right? So that was an instance where it really showed in the matter of day or two how I moved myself out of a PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, through accessing my anger. I'm so glad I remembered this story to share with you. I hope it's useful for you. Share with me if you have been holding yourself back. What emotions have you shamed? What emotions were shamed in your household? What tendencies or desires or traits or characteristics that could be helpful you have been squishing in your life? How can they help you in your life right now? If you accessed them, even looking at how can they positively impact your life, because even negative traits or emotions have always a positive aspects. They are helpful in the way they help us move to the higher stages. Out of this video, I want you to remember that emotions live on a spectrum. Not all negative emotions are equally negative. Not all positive emotions are equally positive. All lives on a spectrum. When you are able to hear with full presence the message that they carry, you are able to be wiser. You're able to be more loving. You're able to be more joyous and more authentic. And this is the way to increasing your vibration all the time, through self-acceptance, through allowing yourself the full spectrum of your humanity, and stop resisting. I hope this video has been helpful to you. If yes, please share it with one of your friends or two of your friends that you know it would help. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.